Hello and welcome back to another One United podcast. I'm joined as ever by Henry. Henry, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. You?
Yeah, I'm good. It's been an interesting week, shall we say, for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, as expected. But yeah, this week's gone pretty sour to be honest. From the get go. So yeah,
So no games to talk about this week, which is I don't know whether that's a bad thing or a good thing given recent form. But yeah, we'll move on to our first segment of the show. The the thing that needs talking about has got to be Harry Maguire.
yeah. Where do we start with this guy? Um, to be fair, there's so many kind of different things coming out about this. Obviously, the trials today now, so there's so many different parts coming out about this. People saying it's a setup from the Greek police, which not to push it, but they are a bit corrupt at times. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit if it was. Also, that he was getting like his sister was getting attacked or something, and then other ones about him getting abuse from people about him as a player and stuff. So different stuff has come out, but we'll only know the real truth once the trial's finished and the verdict will say whether he's in the right or in the wrong. But one thing I will say is how naive can you be as a footballer to go to a bar in Greece? I can understand having a couple of drinks, winding down after the season, fair enough. You can see he was drunk. There are videos of him. You can see he was drunk. You can see the state he was in. He didn't look like he was sober. So to make a huge, it was a poor judgment call really from him. I think to go out and put yourself in that position because you're in the general public, you might get abuse regardless. You know, these guys are getting paid a lot of money, money that most of us that will look at this and will be on Twitter and stuff would dream of getting. They get more probably in a year than most people will get in their lifetime. So it's a lot of money that they're getting. So why can't they take a little bit more responsibility and just be a little bit more careful with what they're doing? Because as a United captain, okay, I've got to put myself in his shoes. That's what I think. As a United captain, you are one of the most responsible people in football. You are, because you're regarded as a role model for younger people. You're also in the England squad, so any kind of poor moves that you make, any again poor judgment calls that you make, will go back to England, to Gareth Southgate, and will go back to United and to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So he has put himself in a position where he might not be able to get out of it. But saying that, it might not be as bad as people are making it out to be. What's your take on it? Because I want to hear this.
I think it's interesting that the longer it goes on, the more innocent he looks. There's when the stories first came out, it seemed like it was a lot of trying to sell a story, trying to get clicks from a player who's been under fire all season.
Mm.
I think it was easy for the media initially to spin bad news on Maguire because he's been under fire ever since he's joined United. But I'm glad to see there's not it's not all it's sort of cracked up to be in terms of the media portrayal of it. There's more and more news coming out now that's suggesting he was the good guy in the situation. I know any sort of assault on an officer is bad, but these officers were reportedly not in uniform. They were clothed. His sister was being attacked. He was defending her. In that state, how's he going to tell the difference between a normal guy and a police officer? I think as bad as it is, some confrontations are impossible to avoid, and for that reason, I don't hold anything against him. I don't think he should be punished by United at all, really. Other than there's a few things that can be discussed that we'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, I'm fully behind Maguire. I do think the bad thing about it is it displays the difference between the media's portrayal of white football player and a black football player, because
Yeah.
you can imagine the coverage this would have got if it was a Paul Pogba or a Raheem Sterling or someone along those lines. I think it's just really blatantly exposed the underlying racism that's still in the media today, and I think that's disappointing. As an industry that I want to go in, it's disappointing to still see that it's common.
I didn't. Yeah, and I'm with you on that. Completely with you on that. We've discussed racism within media before in previous podcasts, and people might not have paid as much attention to those ones because they weren't as kind of widely covered as they are now. But yeah, I didn't really want to bring this up because it's a very difficult subject to talk about. But you've done the right thing, and I think it's right that we do. There is a serious issue within the English media, a problem, an institutional problem, where the blame will shift. Okay, so instead of pinning this on Maguire, which he has a role in this, whether you like it or not, he has a role in this. I don't want to pin the whole thing on him because I don't know the outcome of the verdicts yet. It might be that he is entirely innocent, which is fine. Okay, but the coverage, you're right, has been more leaning towards he's done nothing wrong sort of thing. And the headlines weren't he was arrested for doing this and that, and he should be put in jail, blah, blah, blah. They weren't that. Whereas if this was a black person or a mixed race person or someone of any other, someone that's not a white male, then there would have been a lot more coverage. You're right. There's been more coverage on, Sterling buying his mum a house or him buying a new car or walking in the street than there has of this incident with Maguire. The media tried to play it down as much as they could. You can see that from what they were putting out. And you're right. There is a massive issue with race in this country, and we can keep saying, "Oh, it will get better. It will get better." But there seems to me to be absolutely zero change happening now. We've had the Black Lives Matter movement. It's still going on. Okay, I'm completely behind that. But at the moment, nothing is really changing here. I agree with all the players taking a knee and stuff, but then I see comments on social media, just blatantly racist comments. It's social media is full of racism, and it's not been eradicated yet. But abuse and stuff, I can understand, but all of it has to be eradicated as one. Okay, if someone's cyberbullying and if someone's being racist, they should both be wiped out, not just the one that's cyberbullying. So there seems to be an issue within this country, not just within this country, obviously, but it's being kind of put in the limelight now with all the stuff that's happening, and the coverage of it has been, I don't know, poor, really. And yeah, you're right. It says a lot when they're trying to push forward a narrative that Maguire hasn't done anything wrong when we don't know the outcome of the trial yet. We could find out that he has done everything wrong. It's all his fault. We could find out that it's not. I'm not anti either. But you're right. The coverage has to change because from top to bottom, there is racism within clubs, within people, and the education needs to start when you're younger. You need to be taught. If your parents are teaching you to be racist, you don't learn racism on your own. You just don't. It gets projected onto you by someone close or whatever. So there has to be a change in that. You are completely right, and it has to be done when the kids are younger so they know that racism is not okay. It's just not. So there has to be changes in that sense. And yeah, the whole Maguire situation has pushed it forward again after, what would you say, like 2 or 3 weeks of it going a bit kind of being pushed back in the dark again, which it's a bit embarrassing, really, that it's kind of getting less attention now, because it was originally just a movement, as a lot of people called it. It's not a movement. It is the correct thing to do, to eradicate racism as a whole. So yeah, what's
Well,
your kind of take on the whole media situation with Maguire, and obviously with Sterling and Pogba and stuff?
well, I think I touched on it earlier. It's just it's worrying to see the disparity that's still there. You know, the media are meant to be setting examples for the people. The media are there to tell people information. If the media is telling people information that differs between one race and another, that's just enforcing, but that's just encouraging people to see difference. So you're not going to
Yeah,
get any further with your equality if the people at the highest end of society with the most influence aren't taking it seriously. It's, yeah, I hope it's something that begins to change soon. And personally, I don't know about you. Personally, going into the media, I imagine it's something that people our age are gonna fight for more within the media. I hope, but yeah, it's just disgusting in general. But just to move on slightly, then there's calls that if he's found guilty and if he's had wrongdoing, there's calls for him to be stripped of his captaincy. Firstly, would you agree with that?
yeah, yeah. I don't. I'm not. Again, I'm not pro kind of defaming people and kind of publicly shaming them. I'm not very kind of pro that. But in the same sense, I had an opinion a few days ago that obviously things might change, because I don't. It looked like a few days ago that he was guilty. It did. That was what was being thrown around. The trials today, and we'll find out more as it kind of goes on. If he's guilty, that he'll lose the captaincy regardless. If he's guilty, I don't think there's any question about it. Because if he doesn't, Solskjaer will look weak. You can't have a manager that allows someone to get away with a crime, nonetheless. I know we've had, Troy Deeney had his past and stuff, but that was a long time ago, and obviously there's shown enough change. If he's found guilty of this, he will lose his captaincy. The bigger question for me is, will he lose his place at United or lose his place in the England squad? If he's found guilty, I think there's a likelihood of both. I really do. People don't look at you just as a footballer when you're at the top of the game. They don't. They look at you as a role model and a personality and someone to look up to. If the players are looking up to a captain, nonetheless, who has potentially committed a crime or has been involved in, there's videos of him, as I said, videos of him, hammered. He's just smashed in a bar dancing and stuff. It doesn't look good. It's not a good image for the club, and they'll try and push that to the side as much as they can. I'm sure they'll get Woodward will get his right hand man. I think it's Neil Ashton, isn't it? Get his right hand man to try and push that to the back of the room, essentially. But yeah, if he's found guilty, I don't think there's any doubt he'll have to lose his captaincy, because that sets a really dangerous precedent. If he's kept as captain, that people and players can do what the hell they want, because he is regarded as a role model, not just for younger players, for part of the squad as well. I'm sure, someone who leads by example, someone who's a big, strong guy that, pushes forward the idea of having a largely homegrown side, and kind of trying to help the players around him and stuff. So I think, yeah, it would be dangerous if he's found guilty. Saying that, if he's not found guilty, I'm not sure what they'll do. I think they'll just push it to the side and try and hope that it gets buried within the media. But there's no disguising the fact that he has been in a jail cell for 2 nights. There is no, the Greek police were very clear to make that quite public, that he was in a jail cell. And they were trying to make it public that he tried to bribe the officers as well. And as you said, if they're undercover, it's just corruption. If they're undercover, they're just trying to frame someone. They're trying to put someone down, get a payday, and potentially make a name for themselves. That's probably their idea, but they cannot get away with it if they've done that. So we kind of wait and see what the case is with Maguire, and we've got plenty of players that are capable of waiting in the wings to be captain. You've got your. I know it's a bit soon. You've got your Fernandez, who's he's fantastic and seems to be a leader on and off the pitch. All the players do interviews and say he's had such a massive impact. Even Solskjaer said the same thing. He's had such a massive impact on the squad in terms of personality as well. And then you've got De Gea. I don't think we'll get it if it comes to it, because he got stripped of it previously because of some comments made about the side, which they were right, the comments at the time. He was essentially calling the squad spineless, which it was in the game, that the interview that he did. So yeah, we wait and see who's your ideal kind of choice for the next captain if Maguire doesn't stay as well.
It's a hard one, isn't it? Because Bruno Fernandes he seems to be the obvious choice. He seems like a leader on the pitch. You saw with the thing against the thing with Lindelof on the pitch. That's what you want a captain to be doing. There's nothing malicious in that. It seemed like they were having a very bitter argument, but he's a leader. He wants to win, and he's proven that with the argument that he had with Lindelof. But I think it's going to be a tough decision for United, because Maguire was brought in under this umbrella of the new style of Man United, the homegrown. We want the best team in England, best team in the world, to be filled with the best players in England. And Maguire's the most expensive English player of all time. He fits that mold of being the captain. He's a big figure. He's obviously very vocal on the pitch. He had an immediate impact. That was straight away. I think the first couple of games, people were crying out for him to take over captaincy from Ashley Young. So I think he's their ideal choice. I think they'll stick with him as much as they can. But I do think it's going to get to a point, possibly, depending on how the verdict comes out, where they're not going to have a choice. But then saying that, there's been, Pogba had the captaincy. I think he lost it either through attitude problems or a few poor performances. I think that was unfair. I think De Gea lost it through, like you said, through the comments. Again, that was unfair. But it makes you think, if they were English, would they still be captain now? I think they would.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than possibly Marcus Rashford, but I don't see him as a leader. I just think he would be a captain purely to show the direction that United are heading. They put him as captain because he's the figurehead of this team at the minute, with all his social action that's taking place around him. And he's not a bad player either, is he? To be fair,
not half bad.
He's Greenwood's already come out and said Rashford's been hugely influential in his development. He's helping you raise the youngsters, which is what you'd want from a captain. So I think he's in with a shout. But personally, the way it's going, I wouldn't strip Maguire of the captaincy. But if they did, yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you and say Bruno, even though it's a bit soon.
Yeah.
So moving on, then, I think that's about that all there is to say.
I think so. Yeah.
It's been a quiet week for transfers, frustrating as well. We've lost out to Arsenal by the looks of it on Gabriel. Whether we were ever in for him in the first place, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That seems to be a sort of move by journalists and agents to sort of sell some stories and get a deal wrapped up quicker. But even so, we've missed out on him. The Sancho deal seems to be pretty much dead. It just shows it's showing more and more the incompetence with the United board. We've got a banker in charge of our footballing matters, and I think that shows. So, what I know it's obvious what you're going to say, but I just want to hear your thoughts on Ed Woodward and the job he's doing right now.
I try to keep it to one rant a week, So this will be the one for this week, I think. See, I usually start with all the incompetent stuff and how poor the spending's been with the Glazers and so on and so forth. But I'm going to start with our rivals this time. So, Chelsea. Within this time, okay, that COVID has been so effective, clearly, to their budgets, and to United, we have to budget on players and stuff. We're not financially, capable of getting Sancho and yada, 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 all that rubbish, which is just rubbish. Let's be honest. It is just utter bollocks. It really is. So Chelsea, they've signed Hakim Ziyech, Timo Werner already were the two main ones they already signed even before everyone had been kind of, it was before the end of the season. So they'd obviously, done a good job in that sense. What was that? 70 million? Something along the lines of that. So that's a lot of money. Okay, two players, fair enough. They're just about to wrap up a deal for Kai Havertz. In a kind of situation in the world where COVID has been so effective to everyone's transfer budgets. They're about to wrap up a deal for Havertz, which is going to be 80 million plus 20 million in add-ons. Okay. So after that, they'll have spent, they'll be spending pushing 150 million, with those deals. So then they're going to go and sign Thiago Silva by the looks of it. He's agreed a deal on a 2-year contract, 2-year or 1 year, doesn't matter. He's going to be earning upwards of 150k a week. Good deal to get on a free, more experience in their side, And then Ben Chilwell as well, by the looks of it. That deal's close. That's going to be another 50 million. Then they're looking at another goalkeeper, Magnon, by the looks of it, from Lille. Young keeper, quality keeper, going to cost them probably upwards of 25 million. If this is such a COVID kind of affected market, then why are other teams going out and buying players? Liverpool have already signed someone. They've signed Tsimikas, a backup left back. Arsenal, Gabriel, Willian. And they're looking at they're going to try and sign Ceballos. Again, they've just signed Cedric and Pablo Mari as well. So everyone else around us, City, Ake, Ferran Torres, everyone around us is buying. So we're the only team that seem to be in denial that this is such a kind of anti-United market where we can't get anyone we want because we can't afford the money. That's just rubbish. It is just rubbish. Okay, the operating revenues and stuff, maybe they've gone down, which is fair enough, that COVID will have had an impact, but it clearly hasn't had an impact on all the other clubs around us. So why are we the only team that seem to stand out in terms of we're not paying the money for Sancho, or, we don't want to pay it, might not be worth it? He is one of the best young players in the world. That is a fact. He's played for England. He's played for Dortmund in the Champions League. He's been a class player for the last 2 seasons. He's been absolutely fantastic. If we do not get him this window, we will lose our chance and someone else will get him. Real Madrid will go in for him next year. Pretty convinced of that. They haven't got much money this year, but next year they will because their revenues will be back up again. Barcelona need a rebuild. They'll be looking at him. Liverpool, they've got plenty. They've got money, but they spend it in a kind of wise, savvy way. So if they lose a player, they'll probably go in for him. Chelsea were keen on him this year as well, but they've chosen to go with Havertz. So other teams will be looking at him. He will not be just one team will be looking at him next year. That won't be the case. Ed Woodward is a financial guy. Fair enough, he's good with the marketing and whatever and all that stuff that you have to be good at to be friends with the Glazers because it gets them more money at the end of the day. That's just how it is within this club. So he's fine on that side of things, but we need someone who's capable of running the football side of things. Because, my word, this is getting too much now. It's getting so frustrating. He is incapable of closing transfers. He's just not very good at it. and he waits, and he publishes all this stuff in the media. He does all these kind of briefings with the English media to try and push Dortmund into selling. They have outright said they are under no pressure to sell. We've got two options. We either go for a different player, and by the looks of it, the alternatives that Sky are saying is going to be David Brooks or Douglas Costa. Douglas Costa hasn't started for Juve in God knows how long. He's been a bench player for them this year. And David Brooks just got relegated with Bournemouth. Okay, fair enough. He's 40 million. He might cost a lot less than Sancho. But at the same time, you get a lot of inexperience. He could be another Dan James situation where you wait for him to kind of improve and come up. And in like 2 or 3 years' time, will be fantastic. We can't wait that long. We can't. The side isn't good enough. If you want to be challenging for the Premiership, this side will not do it. It's not good enough. It needs improvements, and a new centre-back is needed, a new left-back potentially, a new central midfielder, a holding midfielder. Matic is a very good player, but he can't play every game this season, and he is like 31. And we need a right midfielder. I'm sorry, we cannot rely on Greenwood the whole season. He's, 19 now? How are we going to rely on someone that's 19 to play every game of the season? James didn't have a bad season, but he wasn't fantastic. So the end of this is just purely, it is incompetence. So I didn't start with it, but it is incompetence from the board. And you know what we'll do? We'll do what we did with the Fernandes deal if we do it. And we'll say we'll haggle for more money off the deal. They'll say no, then we'll just end up paying more than we were supposed to in the first place. It makes absolutely zero sense for me, this deal. That we're trying to agree. We're trying to agree a lot of a lower fee and more add-ons, whatever. Just pay the money, and then if you have to spend less on a centre half and a left back or a central midfielder, you do. But if you get Sancho, you're getting one of the best young players in the world, if not one of the top 20 players in the world at the moment. He is a fantastic player. He's shown that for the last 2 years. It is get him, or I'm saying now, and I don't agree with what happened with Woodward's house and whether that was a setup. I don't know. I don't agree with it at all. But I'm saying now that will probably end up happening again if he doesn't make any signings this summer, because United fans, again, it's not right. I don't agree with it. I don't condone violent action. It's not okay to do that. But United fans will not accept failure. It just doesn't happen. So it's a pretty clear choice, I think, personally.
Yeah, well, I would go back to what you're saying about Chelsea. If they get that Havertz deal's done, it's going to be at least 80 million up front, I think. Possibly maybe a little bit less, but it just completely undermines what the United board have been saying about how a 100 million fee for a player like Jadon Sancho is unrealistic in the current climate.
Mm-hmm.
Chelsea go out and spend 80 million on Havertz. United spend 100 million on. Well, if Chelsea complete that deal, it just shows why aren't United spending 100 million on Sancho, who it's debatable, but he's probably worth a little bit more than Havertz, given the 2 seasons that they've both had. Statistically, one of the best players in the world in terms of goals and assists. It just shows how Chelsea are a much better run club, and this is something I wanted to come on to. Their buying and selling of players is so astute, and I think that's due to their director of football. It's Marina, but I can't remember her last name. It's a bit hard to say, but she's such a quality director of football that goes so under the radar. You've got your main ones like Ragnick and Monkey and stuff like that.
Mm.
I wanted to pull up some sort of stats of players they've bought and sold as well. It's just incredible, some of the fees that they're getting for players. If we just have a look, so you got, they're selling Alvaro Morata for 50 million after he had a woeful season at Chelsea. He didn't have a great season at Atletico Madrid. They still managed to get 50 million for him. Mario Pasalic, 13.5 million. He can't have made more than 10 appearances for Chelsea in his entire career, and they've made 13 million pound from him. You know, David Luiz, they sold him when he was 32 for £8 million, nearly.
Yeah.
Incredible.
What's going on? I think it should cut out.
Don't understand.
Don't know what happened there.
Not sure what happened there, but yeah, as I was saying there,
Yeah. Sorry.
You know, the players, the money they're getting for players that they don't need. You know, I did an article on it a couple of hours ago. It's like when they sold Lukaku after loaning him to Everton, and he played again for him. They sold him to Everton for 30 million. You know, they sold Felipe Luis back to Atletico Madrid at the age of about 32 for 15 million.
Yeah.
The money that they get from these players that they don't need is incredible. And then you look at it from United's point of view. They sold Depay after one season. They made a £15 million loss on him. They sold one of the best prospects in world football still in Memphis Depay for 15 million.
Yeah.
Sold Johnny Evans for 7 million. Tried to buy him back a year later for 30 million before Leicester got him. They sold Raphael, arguably the best right back we've had, other than Gary Neville and Wan-Bissaka in the 20th century.
Yeah.
He was an incredible player for United. They sold him for £3 million when he was in his early 20s to Lyon. Sold Nani in his late 20s for 5 million. He's still doing a good job now.
Yeah.
They sold Lukaku and Di Maria after just one and two seasons respectively. They sold them both for a £10 million loss.
Yeah.
And then it's the money they're spending as well. It's not smart at all. You know, Chelsea are getting high quality deals. You know, Ziyech, less than 40 million. United spend 50 million on Fred. It just makes no sense. United going after Grealish for 80 million when Van der Beek's available for 40.
Less than 40.
Less than 40. It's just
complete.
It's complete and utter incompetence from the board at all levels. But you know, just speaking of spending money properly, we'll just bring this comment up here that we've got. Thanks for commenting, John. It says if Sancho isn't signed for 108 million, who would you spend the money on? Could risk spending 30-40 million on a centre-back partner, 50 million on a decent CDM, and hope Sancho pushes for the move next summer. This is what you said earlier. We need reinforcements in other areas, but the question isn't if you don't spend 108 million on Sancho, would you spend it somewhere else? I think the question more is if you don't spend 108 million pound on Sancho, are you going to spend 108 million pound at all? And that's not looking likely.
No,
but, you know, to answer the question, if United took that question as, you know, seriously, and they did spend 30-40 million pound on a centre back and 50 million on a CDM, who would you bring in?
See, this is for me. I've said to you before. I go as a kind of looking at players, especially as a club like United. You should be looking for the best of the best. Fred wasn't that, so we went and spent 50 million on him. At the moment, there are young players that are up and coming and stuff that you could look at. You know, you've got Camavinga, who's looking fantastic at Rennes, but he's looking like a move elsewhere by the looks of it. To be honest, I don't know who you'd be able to spend 40 million on as a centre-back partner. I wouldn't even spend. I'd just pay the money for Koulibaly. I know it sounds a bit, you know, we were looking for a young side, blah blah blah, all that kind of hokey cokey rubbish. We're looking for. We need to be looking for the best. It's simple as that, really. It's not. To be honest, we're one of the only clubs who realistically can afford Kalidou Koulibaly. If he's up, kind of up for sale for, they're saying 60 to 70 million. He is a world class centre back, probably one of the best in the world at the moment. I would look at spending that money on him. To be honest, 108 million. If you're going to buy, I'd rather spend less money on a CDM because it's less essential for United. For me, Lindelof is a good player. but he has flaws, weaknesses. You saw in the second Sevilla goal, him and Wan-Bissaka, poor communication. There seems to be a kind of lack of awareness with him in important games more than anything. So I would spend more money on a centre back than I would in a CDM, and I'd probably get a younger CDM so they can be mentored by Matic and better players like that. And yeah, but you're right with the saying the Sancho thing. Chelsea have almost spent. They will, when they've got all these deals over the line, will have spent about £200 million. Now, United are being stingy about spending £108 million, which potentially, if we would have done what they said, I know they set this deadline. Everyone says it's a fake deadline. They obviously made it evidently clear that that was their deadline. If we would have paid money in installments before the deadline, we would have got the player by now. If we would have just been a little bit smarter with the money we were spending, there was talk of 80 million, then 20 million, then 30 million in kind of a period of 3 years. Why wouldn't you do that? It doesn't make any sense not to do it. So, yeah, that's my answer to the question. But I don't see realistically us doing that. I think we'll go and buy David Brooks, or as you said, spend ridiculous money on Jack Grealish because he's English. According to the United code, which no one else follows, by the way, no one else follows that rubbish. I understand you have to have a quota of homegrown players. We've got loads of academy players coming through. They can be in the squad. That's fine. And we've got a good kind of core of English players. I understand that they want that. But the cheaper options always seem to be the better options because they're foreign players. They seem to be the better options. We could have spent 85 million on Grealish in the January window, but we made the right call and spent 50 on Fernandes, and he is a better player, categorically a better player. You can see it with the way that he plays. You can see it with the way that he plays for Portugal as well. He is a better player. So why not spend the money on Sancho and then, go and spend, even if you sell a few players as well, get rid of Fred. To be honest, he didn't really do much for me in the Sevilla game. He was okay. He wasn't bad, but he's not been very good for us. Let's be honest. There are players that need offloading for sure. Smalling, if you're not going to keep him, offload him. It's simple as that. Just don't keep him. Pereira. If I tell you what, if Chelsea was selling Pereira, they'd get 20 million out of that. But we'll sell him for 4 million to some lower Portuguese side or Spanish side, and he'll play okay. So, yeah, I don't have any faith in this board whatsoever to do the job. They rarely do. And talking about, as you said, about transfers and poor decisions, Pogba was allowed to leave, and then we go and sign him for 90 million. Like what? 4 years later, 3 years later. How does that make any sense whatsoever? It makes absolutely no sense. So the board are either just thick or they're trying to play hardball. And I think it's the first option, to be honest. I think they're just a bit thick. And playing hardball will not work with top clubs. It just won't. So, but thank you for the question, John. And yeah, to be honest, it's a interesting time at the moment.
Yeah, I think just to answer the question, I completely agree with what you said, but just to answer the question, the suggestion from John again is to sign Jimenez. I think he sort of ties in with what I'd think. I think he's a proven world class centre back. There's no doubt in that. With Godin, he made one of the best defences in the world.
Yeah.
I'm confident in saying he's got a £56 million buyout clause. I think Atletico are slightly on the decline. It could be a good time to buy if you put a bid in. And then that ties in with the CDM. I think you go for a double raid of Thomas Partey. I think, you spend 50 million plus on Jimenez, spend
Yeah.
what the 40 million that it cost to get Partey in, and you've got two of Atletico's best defensive players coming
Yeah.
into your team. That shouldn't go underestimated, because Atletico over the years have been one of the best defensive teams in the world. So signing those two would be incredible. But it all goes back to the incompetent side of it. The board
Yeah.
aren't going to look at players like that,
No, they're
because
not.
why would they? They're good at football. And I was doing research as well, and it's just strange in the way that they work, because the prize money between first and fourth in the league is about 30 million.
Yeah.
So from a Glazers point of view, why would they go out and spend 250 million to get first place when the difference in prize money is only 30 million? They're not footballing people, they're money people. It makes
Yeah.
sense to them to just stay in fourth position, keep collecting that prize money, and
Champions
just
League.
continue. And it just shows, because the 2 years since Fergie left that we qualified for the Champions League through our league position, so we got top four, our average net
Mm.
spend was 49 million. But then in all the other seasons where we didn't finish in the top four, our average net spend is around about 127 million.
Yeah.
It's clear what the board want, and that is top four every year. They don't want to win the league.
No,
They
they
want to
don't.
be in a competition every year, and that's it.
Yeah.
And as frustrating as it is, we've got Ed Woodward as, I think we can call him a director of football, but that's a stretch. You
That's a
just,
big stretch, yeah.
in a completely idyllic world where Ed Woodward somehow disappears, he gets fired, you're looking for a new director of football. There's so many options.
Yeah.
You've just got to look around the world. You've got, like I mentioned earlier, Monchi, Ragnick, both of which incredible sporting directors. Ragnick works close with Nagelsmann at Leipzig to bring through their philosophy of buying young, developing, selling for a high price.
Yeah.
It just shows what a relationship between a director of football and a manager can bring.
Yeah.
You've got Zorc at Dortmund, who was a player for Dortmund, won the Champions League with them, and now he's their director of football. He understands their philosophy, and
Yeah.
he plays on that. He's the man that discovered Lewandowski, Hummels, Aubameyang, Dembele. Lewandowski wasn't sold for a profit, but all the other
Mm.
three were sold for a huge profit from
Yeah.
what they bought them from, and they're still successful as a club. They're more successful than United have been. I
Yeah.
think that goes without saying, despite all these big profile signings. So I don't get what can be achieved from having a director of football that's a banker rather than a football man.
Absolutely nothing. So there was obviously John mentioned Jimenez there. I completely agree with that. But the core of the squad that we're going for now, we will go and spend 90 million on Ben Godfrey. That's what we'll do, because it's an English core. Because we have to be in English, we have to all be able to speak very good English, and we have to be able to play the English way, or whatever kind of rubbish that is. So there are so many deals that make sense. There really are. And we always seem to go for the ones that make no sense whatsoever. Even financially for the Glazers, they make no sense. I would rather they brought in players that were better quality for less money. To be honest with you, I'd rather they did that. But saying that, you got an anomaly in Sancho. But every other board is being smart, savvy, clever with the way they're doing business. They're getting players for the right price. They're not messing around with it. So, yeah, again, I don't trust Ed Woodward as far as I could throw him. So he's and yeah, he's already signed. He's got a record of signing players like Bastian Schweinsteiger. So I don't trust him whatsoever.
Absolutely. Well, moving on to a club who are doing things absolutely right. The Champions League final was on Sunday. Bayern Munich won. I think everyone thought they'd win going into the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was one of the first finals in a while where both teams genuinely had a case for winning. I think, you know, Liverpool, Spurs were never going to win.
Nope.
You know, this was going to be one of the biggest games in football in history.
Yeah.
You think it disappointed?
No, I thought it was quite good. I mean, it was a bit cagey at first, and then it became kind of end to end. And then you're looking at a game that's fantastic. You've got two attacking teams going at each other, and it was a case of who was going to score first. And then from after that moment, you kind of think that whoever scored the first goal was going to win the game. PSG, how much are they going to have to spend to win the Champions League? Seriously, they're going to have to spend another 900 million to win it, because, yeah, it doesn't look good for them. And I said before the game, I think it would have been a bad advertisement of football if PSG would have won it. Not in a harsh way, but they've done things, the oil money, let's throw all our cash at every single player. They're paying Neymar 500 grand a week, so I don't think they could really argue with that either. So they're just throwing money at the situation. Whereas Bayern, I think their whole squad, from what I read, cost the same amount as Harry Maguire. Their starting 11, sorry. That is incredible. It really is. And if you want a sign of a team that are doing it the right way and doing it the clever way, which Glazers, watch this, take note of this, because they seem to be doing it the right way. They've got a squad for less money than we spent on Harry Maguire. So within that squad, you know, Manuel Neuer, probably still one of the top 3 keepers in the world, definitely, I'd say. Jerome Boateng, bit injury prone, but a very good player. David Alaba, fantastic player. To be honest, I thought he was one of the best players of the tournament. He was consistent, and he's quick, and he's got good knowledge. He could play CDM, same as Kimmich. Both play defensive midfield if they wanted to, and they have both played there before. So they're fantastic in the sense of under pressure, they can kind of handle things. Alphonso Davies was the one that obviously stood out for everyone, someone who's come from such a kind of, it's an amazing story, really. Such a low kind of situation in his early life, struggling, and has now won the Champions League. That was his aim, was to be in pro football, and he's exceeded those expectations. By the time, you know, he's probably not even, probably got like another 15 years left in his career at least. So, you know, he's got a lot of promise, and he is a humble guy. So they've obviously got the kind of chemistry in the squad right as well. And then obviously you've got Thiago, and again, a fantastic player, so underrated. Goretzka, who is an absolute animal. He is huge, and he is imposing and strong. Again, links perfectly. Muller, experienced, still a good player. I know Nico Kovac tried to kind of freeze him out of the squad. Well, look at where you are, Nico, now. Yeah, what are you doing now? Moron. Got sacked after losing 5-1. So, yeah, there you go. So that ended up well for him. And then, you know, you've got an option of Koeman or Perisic on the left. Not a bad option to have, is it? And then, you know, on the right-hand side, you've got Gnabry, who, again, was fantastic. And you've got another option of Coutinho. And then the person who should have won the Ballon d'Or, I know they cancelled it, but that's such a pathetic excuse. Well, we don't do it because of COVID. Well, you do every other award, but even though COVID's in the way. So that was just saying, well, Messi or Ronaldo won't get it, so we don't want to give it to anyone. Well, Lewandowski earned that award, and I thought it was a bit embarrassing that they didn't give it to him, to be honest. So again, he was fantastic the whole tournament. So if there is a right way to do things, it is the Bayern way. And that is a kind of stark contrast. It is essentially United and Liverpool that. So PSG have gone and spent money on a load of players, although they've got a lot further than we ever would get. They've spent a lot of money on players and got a high wage bill, and they still haven't won the Champions League. Liverpool, you know, They've been smart, whereas we haven't. So that's the contrast in the Premier League, essentially, of what you're looking at there. So yeah, we are the PSG of our league. We don't really do much, and although they win their league every year, which we can't seem to do for the life of us. But yeah, Bayern is a prime example of a fantastic club with a fantastic board and people they trust within the club to do the right thing, and they always seem to do the right thing as well. So yeah, I'm delighted for them.
Well, the thing I found hilarious, I saw it on a tweet, and I've been carrying it forward ever since. PSG spent over £1 billion to win the Champions League, and it was their own academy graduate that scored in the final to win it for the other team. I think that just goes to show how football should be.
Yeah,
It's all well and good buying the league. It's worked for City. You can't really say Chelsea are doing it. Over the last 2 windows, they've had a net spend of, well, if they get the targets, they'll have had a net spend of about 10 million.
yeah,
So you can't even say they're buying the league either. But yeah, for Bayern, it just it's just something I wanted to move on to. It just sort of shows the importance of an academy over buying the league, because to have an academy product, I think he left on a free to Juve. To
yeah.
have him come back and score in the biggest game of your club's entire history against you to make you lose, it just amuses me. And Bayern have gone about it the right way. The
Yeah,
two of their best players this season, in David Alaba and Thomas Muller, have come through the academy. They've both, I think collectively, they've got over 700 games for the club.
hmm
They are just a walking statement of what Bayern are all about, and that, as a United fan, gives me a bit of hope that we're heading in the right direction. We've got Pogba from the academy, we've got Rashford from the academy, we've got Greenwood from the academy. All three, the three of the first names on the team sheet at the minute.
yeah,
They've all got a couple of years. Well, Pogba's got a couple of years still to improve. He's only 27. He's not in the twilight of his career.
yeah,
Rashford and Greenwood still young. They could become brilliant players, and I think it's something we need to rely on more. We've seen whether Gomez would have been good enough or not. He was a hot prospect coming out of the academy. We've got James Garner coming out. He was one of the best players at the under 23 level last year,
hmm
and I think it goes without saying that football needs to revert back to how it was in sort of the old days. You're not looking to buy players; you're looking to raise them more than anything. I don't know how you feel about that.
I agree with it, but you've got to do. I'll say with the Bayern side, a lot of them are academy graduates. That's good and the right way to do it. But then you've got to sprinkle it with a bit of kind of sauce from outside, haven't you? You've got to put a bit of, it's like Nando's. You've got to put a bit of peri peri sauce on it or something, or a bit of sweet chili sauce to make the chicken taste that much better. So you have to essentially add a little bit of kind of finesse to it. So they've added, players from outside. You look at, although he was cheap, Davis, a fantastic player and a fantastic buy. You look at Coman, again, scored in the final, fantastic player, fantastic buy. Lewandowski, obviously coming from Dortmund, although I don't think they paid a fee for him in the end. I think it was on a free, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Regardless, brought from the outside, not an academy player. So, as I said, you've got to, it is very similar with food. You've got to add a little bit of sauce to make it just right and get the right chemistry within what you're kind of doing. So they've got the right ingredients now, and they've put it all together, and they've made one hell of a burger. I don't know what else I can say. Pizza. I was going to say pizza, but that's very Italian. What? One hell of a sausage.
Oh God, don't say that. But yeah, just going back to Thomas Muller, then I'd say he's one of Bayern's most successful academy graduates ever. There's a lot to compete with. Your friend Franz Beckenbauer and so on, but
Yeah.
he's only 30, which blows my mind. He seems to have been around forever, and he seems to have found his best again this season. Is there a shout for him to be classed as the most underrated player in the world?
Oh yeah, I don't. I was going to say you could even put him in the bracket of contender for the top accolades, aka Ballon d'Or or FIFA. You know, FIFA do a Team of the Year and stuff, don't they? So you could all of these accolades, you could definitely have him up there for them. And in terms of being underrated, I think people are finally. I know it's taken him to be 30. They're finally starting to realise that he has never been poor. He just hasn't. He's never. I've never seen him in a game and thought, God, he's way off it. He always seems to kind of, do good with the squad and help the younger players, kind of nurture them and bring them through as well. He's very positive as well. That's one thing I'll say. He's never been really negative about their side, and this year, heaping the praise on Davis and Kimmich and co. He was, he's a kind of leader, and as you said, he is probably this year is probably the most underrated player in the world. I don't think it's even a question. He's only essentially played half a season after Kovac left.
Well, I suppose then that raises the question: if it's not Thomas Muller, then who do you think is the most underrated player in the world? I think my suggestion, as painful as it is to say it, has got to be Gini Wijnaldum. I think you look on Twitter and the arrival of Thiago, it's sort of turning fans against Wijnaldum. They're now saying that if someone has to make weight, it should be him. But in my mind, he's easily Liverpool's best midfielder. They're blinded by the loyalty to Jordan Henderson. There've been a couple of good performances by Naby Keita. They paid a lot of money for him, so they're gonna react every time he has a good game to sort of justify that value. But Gini Wijnaldum is quietly going about his business in becoming one of the best midfielders in the league without getting any recognition whatsoever. And the fact that Liverpool fans now want to sell him, I think, just baffles me. I think there's obviously going to be other contenders for most underrated player in the world, but he's definitely got to be up there, I think. Who would you say?
I think you're right. In that sense, I think, they've proven this year again, Liverpool, that they weren't a kind of 1 or 2 season thing. They're a good side, and they don't have fantastic, what you class as your average world beaters in terms of the best players you put in the top 3 bracket in the world. They don't have any of those. They're just a great team collectively. So yeah, in terms of being underrated, I think he's right up there, and Klopp's done a fantastic job in managing to get him into that side and get the side working perfectly. So although as you said, it pains me to say it as well, but I couldn't really put my finger on who else. I mean, there are so many players that people heap praise on that don't deserve it, but there are so many players that people don't heap praise on that do 100% deserve it. And maybe the same could be said for some of those Leipzig players that got to the semi-final of the Champions League, and although they're a bit kind of toothless in the semi-final, they looked a good quality squad and worked well as a team. And you've got I'd say like 3 or 4 players out that side you could put in that bracket, even pushing to Yusuf Poulsen, who was the captain, and although he's been a peripheral figure when Werner was in the squad, he's done a pretty damn good job kind of taking the reins in that squad. And then you've got your Awars and players like that who are just mesmerizing to watch at times. So and Lyon, again, another team that collectively, although they finished 7th, I think, in Liga, you can happily kind of heap praise on them for doing what they did in the Champions League. So there are a few players that fall into that bracket, but Wijnaldum, you're right, is one of the top for sure.
Well, just to end off the show, then, this is it's been a weird year in terms of Champions League football
Yeah,
because of the coronavirus. It's made everything, well, all the ties following the lockdown, one-legged, and I
yeah,
think that's created some of the best Champions League games we've seen. There's questions about on social media about whether to keep this format, and I personally agree with it. I think a one-off tie. It's a one-off tie each
yeah,
round. I think it'd create better games, much better games.
yeah,
There's not the argument of the away goals rule, which is coming under fire at the minute. The only problem with it is where you play the games, because I think it'd be hard to organise neutral events for every single European game.
yeah.
That's the only problem. So, would you carry on this format or go back to the old one?
It would be nice to see it again, but I don't think we will. I really don't. I don't. For starters, you got to get teams to agree to it, and that's not going to happen. What team is going to want to forfeit their chance of a home game against in front of their home fans? They've got more of an advantage. So who's going to want to kind of forfeit that chance? So I don't think it will happen. It would be a good idea, I think, but I don't think it will happen. But quickly before we end, go into the fan situation. This year has been tough for fans. The end of this year has been tough for fans. Saw an interview after the PSG game. I'm sure a lot of people saw it with Ander Herrera, where, to quote him, he said, "Having fans in the stadium is shit. Having not having fans in the stadium is shit," which is fair enough because it is. It's rough for the players. It's rough for the fans. And I just want to quickly give a shout out to all those non-league teams who have managed to hold their own just about, and the lower league teams that have had to, kind of finance themselves over a period of time. Some have succumbed to the financial crisis, and some haven't. But I think it goes without showing that when football unites as one, we can create, great memories and hopefully keep all these clubs intact. Because no matter how many rivalries there are or how much you dislike a team, you never want to see a team go under. That's just how it is. So just a quick shout out to all those lower league and non-league teams that have managed to keep things ticking, and hopefully they'll have their fans back, because that's more important for lower sides, I think, to get the gate receipts and have at least a portion of fans back in the stadium, because it means a lot more, and it means so much for the squads and for the clubs and for the fans as well. So just wanted to end on it's been a tough year, but hopefully everyone is keeping safe, and we can enjoy next season.
Well, it's a pretty positive note to end on then. I think we'll call it a day there.
Sure.
So, thanks to John for contributing, and
Yeah.
I hope this new look One United podcast has gone well. Hopefully, we can carry it on in the future. And
Your thoughts, guys, and any improvements you think we can make, and we'll do our best.
so thanks again for Henry. Thanks again to Henry for joining me.
No worries.
Thank you everyone for watching. Like and subscribe and all that. And see you next week.